Hey guys, welcome to Sopi Studio Umbiamas, conectando Aruba com o mundo via video podcasting. Conectar conosco, compartilhar ideias e histórias para nos inspirar e para conan abrir. Sopi Studio é plataforma de podcast na Aruba. Follow-nos no Facebook, subscribe no YouTube ou na plataforma de podcast preferido. Escute o podcast preferido que hora e onde que está. Sopi Studio, powered by Qredits. Botou ideia? Qredits educa e prepara a para ser um empresário exitoso. De business plan, guia personal e préstamo para negócio até com 100,000 forinhos. Bira para mês donho com Qredits. Sopi. Passa na Sopi para o sop, salada, wrap ou flatbread e mais fresco. Com 7 localidades rond Aruba. Nós está cerca de Sopi. SwingMasterz. Organizando events, conferences of weddings. Mister de luz, sound, staging, DJ, trussing of flatscreen. SwingMasterz está claro para ser boa festa éxito. SwingMasterz. E agora, Sopi Studio é plataforma de podcast de Aruba, está apresentar.
Yo, you don't know. We going global with this thing. Boom, top class, university. What a global opportunity. Aruba University. Take part, come join me. Together for the local experience. Spread the culture over the nation. Let's build up the community. Learning and teaching in diversity.
Hello, and good afternoon. Buon tardi, Turinde. Good afternoon, Deborah.
Good afternoon, Charisse. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. We have such really good guests, and I'm really excited to have a conversation. What about yourself?
Totally looking forward to it because they're both male. I feel like the last few sessions we've had quite some females on the show, but today we have two very unique male who are doing quite a lot within the Aruban community.
So, just in case those of you who just tuned in and our viewers, this is straight up conversation about education, a program powered by the University of Aruba, creating a platform to learn about our island stories, our experiences, and simply bringing the university closer to you.
Yes, and as the university is closer, so are we bringing both our guests, Mr. Clifford Rosa and Yiftach Milo. Good afternoon. Welcome. Say a quick hi.
They're a bit hesitant. Yeah, we don't know like that. But that for our viewers, we're going to have a very interesting conversation. Always there's a theme that we think is very relevant right now. But before we start, we always like to get to know our speakers because we are our guests. Because we always say, if you kind of know the person who's behind everything, you know, because when people see Rancho, they say Rancho equals Clifford. But they don't really know who Clifford is. When they say Yusuf, what do they say?
Yes, migrants, LGBTQ, different topics, violent-based, gender-based violence. There's so much they think of when they see you, but they need to find out a bit more about who he is. So let's start with the man, Clifford. So Clifford, you know, we always ask the same question. If you've been looking, you know, you might know, and if you haven't, it will come as a bit of a surprise. So tell us a bit about yourself, and we're not talking about education. We're just talking about Clifford, the person. So question goes for you, Yiftach. This gives you time to think, and tell us also something that no one within the community know. We know immaterieel erfgoed. I know boto miniatura, but the deep and dark.
Who is Clifford? Clifford, what would your friends say about you? How would you describe yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity.
He's like, oh.
Yeah, because for a long time I'm doing my volunteer work in my neighborhood for almost more than 25 years. How Miss Charisse had a long time ago
Very long search and rescue volunteer.
So I finished my education in Holland for a maritime officer, and I came back right away to help my family, and that was in '95.
But now you're telling us the thing. We want to know what would your friends say about you, Clifford? Let's define the question a bit more. You must have an idea. It's vervelend. He's driven.
He is a little bit crazy.
And why is he crazy? Let's start with that.
He always do things and just do the things. And my inner circle know me as the guy who like to go to the beach, like to swim, like to be free-minded.
You know, Deborah, he's been very shy, but he is a very helpful person. He's very caring. I got the opportunity to work with him on the search and rescue. He's very caring. You know, he would like call and say, did you reach home safe? Is everybody safe? If you have the equipment? Very, very caring person.
And he would do that for everyone?
For everyone. You know, he's always the first man there and the last man to go home. So a very caring, and he's a father, very dedicated to his daughter. So I just wanted to add that, you know.
So things change, eh? So that's in that
So
period,
you've moved on from that, and now you're like, I don't care anymore.
I don't care much because now I have my own daughter. So it is for me very important working for the community, for kids and things like that, and not having my own kids. I mean, doing search and rescue was just survive. Yeah. But that is the basic that I came up with. After thinking, what is the education that I have to go into?
Oh, we'll come.
Know. So before that, I was being teach how to fix cars. You know, in the neighborhood under the Quihibom. You know, so. But I'm the only child of my mother, so that's why I think everybody say you are lucky. He was always lucky. So I'm always on my bicycle in my neighborhood. So everybody who know me, my friends from schools, from the neighborhood, we are very close. And how she said, I'm just caring for my friends, my community.
And you still live within the same community that you were raised?
Yes.
And I'm curious as to why not leave? Because you see many people...
Now, sometimes I had tried to leave. So when I went to study, that was a very good moment to go to Holland. But I didn't go with 18 years old. So I was already 23 years, something. Just I was already known on the streets and everything. Okay. That's why I always talk about streetwise, how you can be also educated on the street. And taking the opportunity to go and come back and do my giving back. So always 25 years giving back. And my friends say, you are the only one. So in Sinter de Barrio Playa Babao, River Plate, football, scouting, Baden-Powell.
Always busy with the community.
And what is that? What is that deep, dark something that we don't know about you, Clifford? I mean, we always say
hobby or something that you like to do.
Do you like to bake? Do you like to sing? Do you like to... What's something that people don't
poems?
know?
Sometimes I like to go into tambour.
But that I expected.
The drums?
That I expected.
Yes.
But I didn't know he played it.
Yes, I can play a little bit. So I'm teaching now my daughter how to play already, how to be connected with that
with the earth, with Mother Earth.
Yes.
Wow.
Nice. That's super. I didn't know that.
Yes. That's a new part of life.
Let's go to our next guest because he might run away because
we'll come back to the educational trajectory and also being education and on the streets. I think that's also something that's important. Yiftach, I was just realizing, for me, Yiftach feels he's been embedded in the Aruban community for so long, but you reminded me you've only been here 3 years.
Yeah, 3.5 years. It's been very interesting years, no doubt about it. I mean, for all of us, with the pandemic and all that, I think it taught me a lot. I think it changed me quite a lot. I mean, we discussed with Clifford, his connection to the community. I'm a bit of a ruthless person who moved from one place to another, and I think the pandemic was an amazing experience to stay in one place, to be happy in one place,
to be happy,
to live on an island, disconnected from the rest of the world, to a point where I didn't know if the rest of the world actually exists.
Wow.
And it was a very calming experience for me. That really sort of taught me a lot because I'm used to move from country to country, and it's the first time I don't want to move anywhere.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's thanks to Aruba, but also thanks to this strange experience we all had, and learning sort of to stay in your own reality, accept it, live with it, be happy with it.
So what would your friends, because you are originally from Israel, and we'll get to that in your education trajectory, what would your friends back home say about you? Because we just know you as Yiftach from Hiyas.
Yeah.
And maybe let's also, well, I think a bit lower than what Hiyas is. We'll delve into that. But just tell us something what your friends would say about you.
I think my friends will say that I'm quite a curious person, and I'm passionate about my curiosity. I always wanted to live everywhere. For every birthday as a kid, I just wanted an atlas, and I would live in a fantasy world. I would look forward to come back from school and dive into the atlases and have sort of an imaginary kind of world where I can explore everything. And
at what age are we talking about?
this was 6.
Oh, wow.
I was... today, I know where it comes from. At the age of 4 or 5, my dad was in the Navy, in the Israeli Navy, and we were sent to live in Sharm el-Sheikh, which is in the Sinai Peninsula. And this was heaven. This was heaven. It's the Red Sea, and it's the desert and mountains. I didn't know what are shoes. I didn't know what is a shirt.
So
we
free.
were completely free. And after 2 years, we moved back to the city.
Oh, my clothes,
And it
pants.
was traumatic. It was really traumatic. But at that time, nobody thought about that.
Right.
My parents kept friends from that time, but we as kids were just our reality was discontinued. And I think since then, I was looking for this island, no wonder I'm here.
The feeling you got.
No wonder I'm here in Aruba, and all my family lives in the Canary Islands in Spain. And I guess we all try to sort of recapture the same kind of feeling of belonging to a small community that is really connected with the sea and nature.
Yeah, let me see if he has shoes on. Really quick check. No, I can really resonate with that, especially the connected.
I wanted to ask you, how those fantasies would have looked in the sense of as a child, and even linking it to the Caribbean. Like I know my husband said, I would think of pirate stories and things that they saw on TV. But for you, I'm curious, is it the playing, the fun, the sea?
I mean, I really delve into history. History is also something that I studied at university, and also African studies. I just wanted to discover, just be in places that I cannot even imagine how life is. And that's why I ended up living in the Sahel in Africa or in East Asia. The Caribbean, in my context of humanitarian, I never even considered that it would be possible or would be even a possibility. Unfortunately, it did, and I'm extremely, extremely grateful for that.
Unfortunately and grateful, we'll talk about that.
Would you be able to leave when it's so far?
Well, this is the first time it was 2 years in one spot, right? Because of the pandemic.
It's 3.5 years, and I'm not looking to leaving, especially because the world is so crazy. I mean, where would you go even? Where would you
We
go?
have paradise right here, heaven
right
here.
there. So for those of you who just tuned in, this is Straight Up Conversation about education. And my name is Shari Sundeli. I'm here with my host,
Deborah Alexander, Center for Lifelong Learning at the university.
And today we have our guests,
Yiftach Milo and Clifford Rosa.
So, Clifford Rosa, so welcome again. And we're going to be here for about an hour looking at their trajectories and also discussing a very important topic at this moment. So, you want to go back to Clifford and then see what about it?
But I just want last question for Yiftach, which is, tell us something that, do you sing? Do you, Clifford is in Bamboo, for those who missed it. He's teaching his teaching his his daughter. What are you doing that people would not expect, for you to be doing in your private life?
My private life.
He's thinking, what do I want to spill?
No, I have a bit of a crazy, something that really sort of calms me down. I used to watch quite a lot of planes, takes off and landing. It would makes me relaxed.
Okay, so you're down at
some more people
you're
here.
down at Nikki Beach and you can just sit down there.
That could be. That's a great combination also.
Yeah. So anybody looking for a conversation, just you know where to find it.
I totally agree, because I think as a child, you see it as a form of escape. You know, it's, as you say, your fantasy for the Atlas. For me, it has always been a plane. And when I lived in Leiden, we drive to Amsterdam, and you'd be driving and by the airport in Schiphol, and I see planes. Your mind takes you where they're going, where did they come from.
Exactly, just to imagine the people sitting inside.
And I think for Clifford and me, it's the sea, right?
Probably.
It is a combination, no? As an island also, no? So
Exactly.
Yeah, surrounded.
I used to live in Singapore as a kid, and we were Israeli, so we were not able to cross the border into Malaysia or Indonesia. So we were really trapped. And me and my sister, we used to take the subway to the airport and just sit there, you know, just to... Because all my other friends in the weekends, they would cross over to Malaysia or Indonesia.
But can you explain to the audience why you were not able to cross over?
Well, Israel at that time still is. Since we became independent in 1948, quite a few Arab countries and Muslim countries never really recognized the state of Israel. So we didn't have diplomatic relations with quite a few countries. It has been changing in the last few years, and now there are still countries that don't recognize Israel, but it's really changing. And for me, I got another citizenship, so I can travel actually now to most places.
To most places. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a
diplomatic.
right. There's so much history behind it. You know, if you give it some thought, actually where someone come from, and like you said, as being a kid, and what is it longing that you're for? You know, why the Atlas? Where did it come from? What were your deepest thoughts as a kid? You know, you kind of reflect back on that, and you get to understand who you really are and what you're doing.
Coming from a migration background, and I think probably many people in Aruba would relate to that, you sort of think that, at least in my case, my grandparents made a decision. I don't know if it's a forced decision or a free will decision, but they made the decision at some point to move to another country. And I felt extremely frustrated that I was born in the Middle East, in this desert country, at that time, very sort of bit conservative, a bit machista, and I wanted to experience other places and have also some kind of a freedom to actually choose where I want to live.
And I think that's the nice link with Clifford as well, going now to the educational trajectory. You said you left at an older age compared to most students who leave 17, 18, 19, and you said like 23.
I just finished John F. Kennedy Technical School.
Where did you go to school before that?
St. Dominicus College.
Okay.
So I was always in the neighborhood.
I just want to make sure.
I was like,
just making sure.
John F. now, Department of Education.
Yes, and then I went to the door of MTS, and I said to my friends, I will not go.
Really?
So I take 1 year to change what I been prepared for. So, I was a carpenter, so I was okay to go into technical, so making use of your hands. But I said, some years before I was already at Mr. Jais Orman. That's close to Cinder du Barrio Pleibabouw, and I start learning how to fix engines. So I changed from
carpentry to
engines, and then asked MTS what I can do. There was nothing to do, so I decided to go right away to in that direction.
But
not because I stayed to work 1 year. I worked at the Mercedes-Benz garage, then to Atco. Transportation.
So now I'm like so curious. How did jump to the Maritime Officier? I mean,
because when I check around for the education to be engineer on a boat, so machinist, there was nothing in this area. So I decided to go. I just got subsidy.
You were subsidized to get the opportunity to.
Yes.
Okay, because I was like, it's like so different. First into carpentry, and then
Yes. Yeah, it's just a traditional way, So my grandfather from my mother's side is a fine carpenter, my father was a fine carpenter, so
You've been a
wow,
very-
you kind of went
I
into
went
the trade of your yeah.
Yes, and then doing much other things. Then I realized engines and things like that. So that's why the combination as a captain also was a good because I can fix the boat and I can
right. You were able to
drive the
captain
boat.
it,
He was
and it
thinking
ain't
in-
easy. Yeah, but I was like, maybe that is his secret that he didn't tell us. So he says fine carpentry. You see, it comes up. It comes up.
Yes, that's those things
So
on the
that's
way,
why
you know,
at the rancho, certain projects you lead at it because there's a lot being done where the volunteers do, but you need someone to guide them. So that's
yes. It is
how I
another
understand.
technique that I come up with when I start doing volunteer work at Search and Rescue, but then at the Sint-Barry Plijpenbouw. If you see like the drawing inside, the logo is like a boat with so that is very you went to you make use of Sint-Barry Plijpenbouw. So just imagine that we put the logo as a sailing boat.
no, I
And
understand.
you know,
Okay,
so putting those seeds since that period already.
But let me ask, in terms of your education trajectory, you know, you took some gap years, if you could call it like that. Now we call it gap years.
Well, but I
with
think
you.
in his terms, sorry to interject,
Yeah.
in his term, Gappy was really searching, but he was at the same time, he let the street educate him by learning and doing and learning and doing.
Which we said, you know, in the past, it's not
Right.
taking a gap year just to do nothing. But how was it for you then when you went to the Netherlands then to study? Because you're older then, a bit older in age.
Like to go out. Let's say I was doing visage a lot. So when I went
Before
to
it burned
Holland,
down, it
Who
burned
was
down
it?
because of you. That was a club,
Who
Gifta.
was
That was
it?
a
That
club, a
was
very known club.
you know, so
Very known
I
club.
get to know everything already, streetwise, and then making the decision to go to Holland. Knowing, it is a big mother island, motherland. Yes, motherland, and be aware. So that's why I came to Holland. I decided to go to all the way behind Groningen, Delfzijl.
I was in Groningen, but I've been to
Verder kon het
Delfzijl.
niet.
No,
I've been to Delfzijl, yeah.
So so it is the decision, so I can go and come back.
Do you think had you gone to the west, as we call it, to the Amsterdam and those areas,
yes,
you would have equally
over
been
it.
successful? I
No.
mean, as in
No,
to
no,
study
no,
and
no,
live?
No.
Because you said you really chose to...
Yes, to be out
Why-
of that city life.
Yeah. So at a young, although you were a bit older than he is, but still as a very young man, you were very disciplined. Like, you know, you knew who you were.
Yes.
Because you were like, if I go to Amsterdam, forget
Yes,
it.
yes.
So even that, I think, is a very good decision because sometimes, you know, as you have to be aware of your personality so that when you make choices, you make them,
That's why
that you're very
I
aware
look,
of how your choices you
for-
make.
Yeah, the point is, if you see the education that I apply when I was at that moment to on the Rijzaken for the you call that
For the studiebeurs? Yeah,
studiebeurs,
yeah. For the Aruba lening. Well, it's now called the Aruba lening. Yeah.
that we still have to pay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we enjoyed
anyway, so I saw a lot Arubian go to Rotterdam or Amsterdam, and the first years or two, they change. But I went to Holland before that, so I know that if I go to Holland, I need to be in a relaxing place.
And okay, so we get a good idea.
Interesting, yeah.
And
Thanks for sharing.
Yiftach, I heard you said African studies, you know,
Yeah.
in Middle East to Africa to everywhere. What was your educational trajectory like?
Well, I you know, in Israel you have to do these, compulsory studies, and you go to school like anyone else. I didn't really think much about it. I was always, as I said, a curious person, and I remember since first grade when I learned how to read and write, the first thing, you get a book of a reading book for the year, and I would go straight to the part in Israel which is about the Holocaust. It fascinated me from the first moment. I always sort of had this fascination until today, reading about that, and in a sense, no wonder I'm doing what I'm doing. In a sense, I always wanted to understand that, and I wanted to understand how people lived through that kind of experience. How did they survive? How did they feel? And as a kid, also wanted to be a bit of a hero because, in those books, when you're first grade, second grade, you think of these people as a hero and what they went through. You read about the survivors mostly. So, it was a mixture of just such a different kind of context that I was really fascinated by. And, this sense of, maybe I could be a hero. And I think what happened is that in second class, I was selected to participate in a theater play about these kids, Jewish kids in Warsaw that were selling cigarettes to survive during the war. And I really sort of connected with the part, and I thought it even, sort of influenced my interest. And
And then from there, so you indeed did hold a bachelor's degree in history and African studies at the University of Tel Aviv, and a master's degree in development studies from Melbourne University, Australia. You've really been all over the place, haven't you?
I tried. I tried. Now I'm a bit, I think with age also, you're just...
What was so interesting about Australia that you went to Melbourne?
As a kid, also when we lived in Singapore, we traveled in the Pacific Islands, in Fiji. Later I've been to other islands, and I was really fascinated. I mean, this is where I wanted to live. For me, this was paradise. Fiji was paradise. So when I first started with humanitarian work, my first really attraction was Africa, because I haven't been to Africa. There were so many countries there I wanted to know. So I went to Africa, and I joined UNICEF after my degree, and went straight into the civil war in Angola, which was quite an experience that really changed my life in a sense. But my dream was always to work in the Pacific, to go to the Pacific. And then I said, when I did my master's, I said, all right, I won't go to the US or UK, I'll go to Australia. And it was the best decision I ever made. I think studying in Australia is the best. Universities are great. There's no hierarchy. It's a very informal country, very participative, very open to foreigners. And at my time, it was very cheap. Today, unfortunately, it's not. It's not, and it's quite, it's quite expensive. But it was a wonderful experience. Experience.
I'm just thinking, wow. I was my question was actually in my brain. Where have you not been to? Because that's what I was thinking.
I've been to around 85 countries, I think. Yeah.
But which one is on your list
on
of
my
still?
list? Oh, I've got tons on my list.
The top one on your list, or the top three on your list, let's see.
Madagascar is one. I always was fascinated and would love to, again, an island. And I really would love to go to Norway. I've never been to Norway, and I think it's probably so beautiful.
Islands?
It is.
I think these are at the moment the top.
Top. Those who are listening, and we have students, we have parents, we have a diverse population. Now, you said you got involved with UNICEF and different other organizations. As we're going through your trajectory before we go to the topic, what would you say to our youngsters who are like, we would like to be part of it? How could we be part? We're living on an island, and how, because we saw how Clifford, he really would make sure he knew his community. But you've been around, you've known the world, and sometimes students say, nah, that's for students who are living elsewhere. What could you say to our students here in Aruba?
I think the path is here. I mean, for me, it was really the university. I mean, I studied African studies. And history, and at the end of the 3 years, we came to the head of the department and said, okay, we've studied that, what are we going to do with it? And they approached the Israeli embassy in Angola, who created the project with UNICEF, and 4 of us went, and we all stayed, we all got hooked, and had an international career. And I see Hayas here as really paving these kind of career for Arubans. We have 20 employees. They're all Arubans. Half of them come from the University of Aruba. Half of them are graduates of social work, of OGM. And by having this kind of experience, working with refugees and migrants in Aruba, for HIAS, for UNHCR or IOM, then, or any other, even local organization that works with this kind of thematic issue, you can then, apply for international jobs and you can have an international career. And Arubans have the language, they have the exposure, and the fact that you're a small island, I think it is not an issue at all these days.
So you mentioned HIAS already,
Yes,
so
I was
let's
just gonna
delve
say.
in because people hear.
Yes,
HIAS.
but before we go into HIAS, which is very important right now, I just know we have people keep logging in. If you're interested, you can ask any questions, put it on a comment. If we're not able to answer during the show, we will always get back. Both our guest speakers as well can also give you some information. So if you just tuned in,
Straight up conversation
about education, a program powered by the University of Aruba every Thursday from 3:30 to 4:30. So
This is Straight Up
that,
Conversation
now
about
we're talking
education,
about
a program
yes,
sponsored by the University of Aruba.
All right, having said that, and we're talking about HIAS. Could you explain? Because the abbreviation for some, it may be known for others not.
So HIAS originally was called the the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. So it was formed by Jewish refugees in New York in the 19th century, 1881. They were refugees fleeing Russia, Ukraine, similar things that are happening these days, unfortunately. And they grouped and decided to provide services to newcomers who are arriving in New York in the late 19th century and early 20th century. There was mass migration to the US from all over the world. And I think quite a lot of groups assisted their countrymen or fellow families. And with time, HIAS was working actually all over the world to try and assist Jews fleeing either the Holocaust or persecution in different places and finding new homes, mostly in the US, but also Latin America, Canada, Australia. And in the last 30 years, HIAS really opened up its doors and is working in 16 countries today with refugees and migrants, mainly in Latin America. That's the biggest focus. But also in Africa, in Middle East, and in Europe. And unfortunately now in Ukraine. It was really funny. It's not funny, actually. But 10 years ago, we opened HIAS Ukraine. And after maybe 6-7 years, we decided that, okay, we'll turn it into a local organization. There's no need anymore for HIAS engagement there. And they can, continue on their own, which they did. And unfortunately, here we are again, engaged in assistance to refugees in Ukraine and being active in Ukraine itself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's so much I want to ask for now, but then this ties in right to our topic where we're looking at cultures and refugees and the changes we've seen, because I know when I recently traveled to Colombia and you look at, certain values and the way, they correspond with each other, and we look at the Colombians here, you see there's a difference, but you get to understand them better. Yeah. Let's talk a bit about the culture. That's your area, Clifford. Let's look at how you have seen the changes during this year, because we have many migrants here. We have over 86, I think, different nationalities on the island, but we also have different migrants, especially right now from South America. It's the biggest group. How have you seen the development as being very active in the community?
Okay, first of all, I'm also coming from migrants' grandparents.
From where, Clifford?
From both sides. I mean, from my mother's side, my grandmother come from La Guajira, from Riohacha, Colombia.
Would not have thought.
No. Yeah, from
so that's the mother of Ramon Todd and the Rey.
Yeah.
That's the mother of my mother.
Something we didn't know either.
And the father of my mother came from Curacao, and it is also with a background of slavery and And then from my father's side, also they are coming from Rodriguez, Rosa, also from Curacao originally, and then other way in the Caribbean.
Wow.
So you learn people through
Yes.
conversations. You really understand where
Yes.
people come in. So you having a migrant background and having being so deeply rooted within your community. We've seen that. I mean, my parents are from Grenada and Carriacou, and even born here in the time of Lago, but still the roots. It has changed our culture. You see it on one end. You see how culture sometimes affects people, and you see it from trying to preserve also heritage.
Yes.
And
Yes.
finding a balance.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the thematic came up also when Archaeological Museum opened their doors in Rancho, in Schelpstraat in 2009. I realized with that temporary exposition, Yolanda Richardson was the one who also worked very hard on that thematic. And realizing as a neighborhood guys of person that we didn't know our own history.
Heritage. Yeah.
So it was like a shock. I saw people or elder people from the neighborhood crying that days of the opening of the temporary exposition. And that was a shock, and the urgency to do something in cultural in the heritage, because then it is much broader. So before that, I was doing my maritime things in the neighborhood, but also working in Pleipabouw and the Bedenpower, so looking at why that situation that we are into, and realizing that we have a tradition to do it, but how the cultural is part of our education also on the streets. I always bring it back to the street because it is the basic information that you might encounter with, and doing my own research, coming up with the relationship in this area, because what is our culture? So the thematic culture was also always an issue. Even papiamento is an issue still. It is part of our culture. But looking to away, we realized that we need to preserve our heritage. And now I'm asking for protection to our heritage. So what is our heritage? So that's
is this heritage? So coming back also and linking it, I'm going to link it to Yiftach. Do you feel that this heritage is threatened as well through migration, or is it just threatened by a younger generation who might not identify? Sometimes, as you say, with the history and our culture and.
No, the point for me is, we are an island in development. Too fast. And the gap between the development and the culture is so big. And then realizing that, the community need their culture. They need to be not only part of the celebration of Eilerijnen. So how to combine those things into your neighborhood and looking to the influence. So who is doing that? So like fishermen, so sometimes in the beginning we talk about that. It is a neighborhood known for fishermen.
Yeah, that was
so
his
if
trade.
see all those pictures of the development of the harbor.
Correct.
So
where it was.
you never imagine what is the social impact on the community.
Yeah. Before we go to Yiftach, one of the things, I was reading up on the influence on refugees, and when we're looking at culture and heritage, we often tend to look at the tangible things. So what we see, the artifacts they used, the products they made, but it's also their values, tying into your question on the changes and having different refugees have different values, have different customs, and we don't really talk much about that. I want to switch over to you, because that's part of the culture, that is part of the development as well.
I mean, we live in a global world, and not that this is any news to humanity. I mean, I think we always migrated. We all came out of Africa and spread around the world. And look at us, we created a diverse humanity. So I think it's almost a natural thing, it seems. Look how we talked about movement, of this dilemma of staying in one place or moving. And why do we have this dilemma internally? It's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer. I don't really have an answer. So I think, cultural identities are, first of all, multiple. They're multiple. They're not, you don't have one identity or one type of structure. You have one grandfather from Curacao and another one from Colombia, and you are Aruban, and your sister might live now in the US. So I think, first of all, what we do need to build is some kind of a backbone or a narrative for yourself.
Correct.
That will help you sort of have your spine to then absorb.
Ground your own story, your own heritage.
What you want to absorb from other culture, from TV, from who knows where. And I think that is important. Now, in most countries, it's the education system who sort of chooses the narrative of culture and the narrative of your history. I just felt that, the first thing I came here, the first week, was buying a history book about Aruba to try to understand what the story.
Did you?
Little bit, but it's so it's limited. You need different sources to build the whole picture. You don't want to. So it's complicated. I think at the end of the day, for humanity, migration is extremely important because otherwise we wouldn't have advanced. But I totally understand the balance that needs to be between preserving some of your uniqueness, plus absorbing what you want to absorb, and not that you really have a control about it too much, but you need to be aware of that and need to be aware of the positive sides of each culture, some of the negative sides as well, but there's always going to be mix, and thank God there's going to be, there is a mix.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry.
No, I want to say, yes, Yiftach, you see it from the other side. You see it from people who you're aiding people with forced migration. And on Aruba, there are quite a large number. Can you share maybe an idea, and the number with us? And what type of migration are we talking about?
Well, there's a few types of migration, but, the main thing, there's no real registration of those who are coming, although it's possible to sort of know the numbers. I guess you can look at the airport of who came in and who didn't leave. We are focused mostly on the Venezuelan population because of the situation in Venezuela and the fact that almost 6 million people left the country seeking safety and seeking also to secure the lives of their family members,
correct,
etc. But as you know, there's the migration from the Dominican Republic, Colombia, Curacao, other islands, and who knows? At the moment we might find Russians and Ukrainians.
Chimamanda Ngozi, she is the novelist from Africa. She always said, the danger of a single story is like what you were explaining. That you can have just one side, like when you were looking for the history books of Aruba. Now, I think it's also very difficult because if you have so many stories, how do you actually know what the heritage is and, having that backbone from where you really come from? How could we preserve that?
Well, oral history, how you said, what is the ingredient that you might need to bring the balance? It is about not only the tangible heritage, but also the intangible heritage. So knowing how to survive on the island. I mean, there is so many things that we don't know how they did it as intangible cultural heritage. But we know that the building is there. This how they build it, we don't know.
Yeah, but I remember, what's his name, Mr. Maduro from Tilaruba, he would have these like short stories where he did an interview of the older population to get the different stories on what actually took place.
And recently at the University of Aruba, there was also the presentation on Monday. I'm saying recently, it was on Monday. My week feels like it was a month. On the Dande, I know in December they aired it, and around the 18th of March it was aired again. And I would say for anyone who missed it, we will have it on our YouTube channel from the University of Aruba. So go to YouTube.
Who missed the documentary of the
the session on the discussion on the oral history. Sorry, yes. But I know the video. If not, Ruby Ekmeijer would know, and there's a team. But
you bring that now. I would like to say, I was maybe the only one in that room who still didn't see that documentary yet. And they asked me why. I say, maybe...
Shame on me.
Yeah, it costs. And it is very important for that thematic, Dande, to be much easier to reach into the new community. Because we would like to see Dande on the UNESCO list. But how? If we are doing that for so long, and we still need to do. It shows that we still need to do a lot of things to see if the Dande can come up at the UNESCO list. I
mean, it's a question of priorities. At the end of the day, it's resources, and it's unfortunately culture is always sort of losing to other kind of investment. But I think the university of everywhere has a major role to play of getting funding for doing research on history, on heritage, on culture, preserving this, and also bringing different sources so you can then have a more complete picture of the history and culture of Aruba. And I think this is something that, university or civil society like Rancho, this is a very significant role, and you need resources for that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's the biggest problem. So if you see in April, Stichter Rancho will celebrate 12 years of existence, and my friend here is only 3.5 years on the island. He have already 20 person working in, from the university, from a different perspective, and doing a multifunctional process, so
So I would say if anybody's listening in and you're a part of any organization, I think what you're trying to underline is it's sometimes indeed having the contacts and having the funding so you can also continue to preserve the heritage, which is so important. So if you're listening in and you may have, please, our students, please reach out to Clifford from Rancho. One of the other things, so thanks for sharing that. One of the other things what I wanted to ask you too, is when we talk about refugees, there's always like a negative intonation, right? But we know the refugees most often bring amazing strength, knowledge, wisdom, resilience, and lived histories to their newly settled lives. That is not often discussed or highlighted. Could you shed some light on that?
Sure. I mean, look at Albert Einstein. Look at so many people who contributed to our, day-to-day culture. Many of them were refugees. At the end of the day, the refugees we meet are the strongest, innovative, most motivated, because if they cross the sea or cross land, they
Could you imagine?
didn't succumb.
Correct.
Because we don't see those who lost their lives.
Correct.
We actually almost getting the cream of the cream, people who were resourceful enough to survive, to make decision, to reach somewhere. And usually, if you look at migrants in general and refugees in general, they're the most successful people usually because they've lost everything. They know what agency is, because without agency, they wouldn't have survived. And the worst thing is to take their agency. And that's why, humanitarian work always needs to be very, very careful, because the last thing you want to do is take people's agency, make them dependent, and things like that. And when this happens, then you start getting the more, sort of negative sides of how people review refugees. Yeah. And I always sort of, in my mind, I always think of, if you may become a refugee, and that can happen to anybody. Of us, and that's what we've learned.
Anyone
learned
can
find himself in this situation. the best thing is just don't consider yourself as a refugee inside your head and your mind, because that could break you. And really try to preserve your agency. That one that really made you survive this experience.
But we know that's easier said than done, because when you speak to them, and sometimes, unfortunately, the system that we have, sometimes it really drains them. It really confronts them with many stumbling blocks. Because I mean to say, if I look at the heritage of my father, it's actually from Montserrat. I was fortunate enough to be there before the volcano, took over the whole island. But then you see how difficult it is, because they're like, I know with my upbringing, my father would go like, you have to use all opportunities. I did not have that. So, embrace it. And then you would hear remarks as, yes, but everybody's coming in and embracing, we don't get a chance. But why don't you continue? Why don't you move forward? Because everybody wants that opportunity, and you have to embrace each opportunity that you have.
Take it. Yeah, and take it.
Right.
But sorry.
Without culture, each of them is not completely with a backup to go to other places and to keep surviving, because the surviving mode is a cultural thing also. No?
Yeah. No, that's why I say it all tied in,
And we're talking about culture, but culture also has some negative,
definitely.
we know, if we're looking about gender, if we're looking about different race, etc. So I think what is important is really just, and that's where education comes in, being critical about culture, about everything, and then really seeing what is important, what you can actually take out of it, because culture can be oppressive at times.
Yes. There's a quote I was looking at. It says, if we are to preserve culture, we must continue to create it. And every day, again and again, as we're having these conversations, different nationalities, where we meet and have these fruitful discussions, you learn more about each other.
Yeah, and it is really necessary for the complexity of the different nationalities that we have on the island. And still having all that different nationality, and the island is still surviving. So, taking in consideration each background.
Yep.
Yes.
And if you realize they have a right, international law give them all the rights to keep doing their own culture everywhere they are, where they are. So it is a complex thing, but that's why we start already the awareness about the multicultural system. It is, knowing that there is so many other different culture into your community. So that's why for Rancho, the change is very hard. If you see what is the influence of the immigrants, it is.
Rancho is so different from before.
So, so you cannot imagine what Rancho used to be.
Yeah. I can even say, just tiny, even if I look at St. Nicholas, my hometown, I remember, all our parents came from our hometown. Yes, Dushi San Nicolas. They all came to work at the Lago. They all came from the English Caribbean island, because if you can speak English, you can work in the refinery. And then I went abroad to study, and then I came back to work at St. Nicholas, and it was completely Spanish. I had to learn Spanish to communicate with my customers who were then living in a barrio. And I'm talking like in a span of maybe 10 years when I came back. And I was like, just such a big change. And then you saw the change in food pattern, the change in the way we approach each other.
But I think it's just so natural,
Correct.
If you come from Amsterdam, or you come from Tel Aviv, or you come from Sao Paulo, I'm looking at the specific neighborhoods, let's say, where the Jews came to Brazil and Sao Paulo or New York. And then these communities became Korean, because the next wave was Korean. The next wave is Chinese,
And after a while, indeed, food becomes, I was having this discussion the other day, the Johnny cake and the sacco was something that was so inherent. And now it's funny, you drive around everywhere and they're selling a sacco. Everyone came to St. Nicholas.
Even the Chinese.
Selling sacco. So when we're talking about culture, there was such an issue about whether something as simple as that food was Aruban or not. Yeah. But now it is being sold over, and no one, it's like you went from the discussion, there was nothing, and then it's completely embraced. You know, it has been
Correct.
embraced, and that's with everything.
Yeah, and I think Rancho, unfortunately, in a sense, this is where the migrants come, you know, and maybe that's the tradition, and maybe in another 10 years it will be, I don't know, another nationality. And
I think we will evolve.
it's like it's like
It's
the
a
port of entry.
constantly, right,
Yes.
right, a
Yes.
constantly change, which we need to embrace. Let us not just accentuate the things that go bad because that you have that everywhere. But let us embrace each other because we are a part of the culture. Like it's constantly evolving.
But what happens a lot, and this is the politics of things, is that these neighborhoods, a lot of time, it's really comfortable to forget about them. Because, you know,
Adaption.
Yeah.
because their people cannot vote, or their people,
Yeah.
you know, are not really, let's invest in the people.
Contributing.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of times you find that these neighborhoods at the end of the day are being marginalized.
And that's not the idea. But, you know, I'm seeing the
Yes.
time. It's you have 5 minutes left. And, you know, with everything, you can keep on
Yes.
asking. I'm curious, what's next for Rancho? I know I've seen, you know, I get your emails and I'm like, oh, they're doing something again and again and again. We've collaborated.
Maybe
the
he will be playing with his daughter at the time.
Yeah. What's upcoming for Rancho?
Okay, for Rancho, a lot of things can keep going how it is or getting enhanced to be involved. Like now one student is doing urban planning. I said, okay,
Awesome.
wow. Yeah, it is very important to just talk about urban planning, you know?
So would you like your university students to reach out to you? Because I can almost hear that you have many projects.
Yes.
Okay.
We are likely in the collaboration with the University of Aruba. The same as, yes. Sometimes we come together and realizing, what is the opportunities. A lot of things change because of the pandemic. We had to readjust the whole planning, make it COVID-proof. But nowadays we have to do it SDG approved. And yes, we have a project that called Celebration of 200 Years of Oranienstad.
Okay.
200 years.
Okay, wow. Could you imagine?
You know, so that's the thing that we need the help of the students of the university to
students,
make their
community,
own
funders.
thing, you know, so to make their vision, their
Do
motivation,
their research.
do the research, and be active. Not only for
Get involved.
the funding or for the salary, because that's the thing that we try to elaborate about. It is when you need to volunteers, you need volunteers on all levels. You know, so we need volunteers, professional volunteers who is willing and able to do something for their own community.
Wow.
And it is very, I want to scream very hard.
From Hooiberg.
But the point is, we are a small island, and we need that backup of our own students to do the things in the direction how it have to be, because they are professionals, but taking the heritage in the consideration. So 200 years of Oranienstad, that means not only the celebration, having
also everything
orange rum or orange beer and things like that, but to be more aware and able to do
Contribute.
more research for Oranienstad to be protected. Because if we don't think that in UNESCO, so that's why I just write down about UNESCO, because we have international organization on the island doing their job. And what is our job to do? Our job is to preserve, to make a lot of documentation, because Dande, Mr. Adi Martes came up with maybe some surprise again, because he is the only doing research in a certain level how the community was living in the 17 or in the 1800s and things like that. So that's why 200 years of Oranienstad, it is a reflection, but also a research opportunity for the students.
And now quick to Jefta, because you recently celebrated something, didn't you?
No, we're going to celebrate.
We're going to celebrate.
On the 12th and 13th of April, we're going to have an official opening of our new community center. So it's an area where we conduct activities, courses, and we also basically there's spaces for community-based organization to self-organize, to do activities, to have office space if they want, and really a place where, especially with the refugee and migrant community, a lot of times there's a lot of fear of detention, deportation. People feel quite scared to move around. So to create a safe space where both migrants and Arubans can meet, can collaborate, can learn from each other. And we're going to open this space in 2 weeks from now, and we'll be happy to invite you all.
Oh, thank you so much.
So they can be pending on your Facebook page, I guess, website.
Okay.
So and of course for Stichting Rancho,
Yeah,
Facebook.
we have everything on Facebook, on social media. We are thankful to Ginelli, who is the one behind the scene doing a lot of things. Like today we have Marche Rancho. We have a music school coming with music. We have different artists coming up today for taking over Rancho as artists, and those things are
Wow, there's so much going on in community. So having said that, Deborah, I know we have more questions. I still had 2 questions with you, but we will save that for another opportunity.
I would like
but
to know more about the street life in Rancho, but that's a different conversation because you know what we can tell the youngsters and teach the youngsters.
Yes. So those of you who joined us today on Straight Up Conversation about Education, a program sponsored by the University of Aruba, we're creating a platform to learn about our island stories and also the empowerment. We hope that you remain a lifelong learner.
And if you aren't, you can always start very simple.
Correct. Send an email to cll@ua.aw. Get on their mailing list.
And visit our website.
Visit our website because, yes, on the 20th of April, we have a few new master programs. So you are already invited to the university. Doors will open at 6. And we have many opportunities. The university is part of our community. So having said that, thank you so much, our guests.
Thank you, Yiftar. Thank you, Clifford.
Yes,
it was a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed.
It was a pleasure.
And for those of you looking in, I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next week again.
Yes, 3:30 Thursday.
Yeah,
have a
Sopi
great
Mix.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yo, you don't know. We going global with this thing.